Hello, and welcome back to Retrieving Sanity, your podcast for all mental health, addiction, and recovery issues and topics. This is your host, Keegan, and we have our co-host, Simba.
Sombrero.
Simbrero. If you haven't seen the new Retrieving Sanity poster, go ahead and check it out, and you'll understand why it's Sombrero.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And by the way, that is going to be posted on WDJYFM's page. So, Simba, what is our topic for today?
Today, we are going to discuss the pains that come along with growing. We're all familiar with, or if we remember, our growing pains, but in our mature life, the growth that comes along and the grief that comes along with growth,
Just don't start whispering.
I have insecurities.
So, do you have an insecurity about the growing pains? Is that why you suddenly got real quiet a little bit?
You know what? You are not my counselor, first off.
I didn't say I was.
It's painful. It's something that I don't want to acknowledge because sometimes I would stunt my self-sabotage, my own growth because I knew things were going in a growing direction. And I'm like, you know what? This is too painful. I don't want to. Let's just stay the same.
Okay.
You know?
But why would it be too painful? Is it kind of like you're trying to grow and you're like that plant that's stuck in like a little cube and it grows into the cube, but it wants to go further? Is that kind of what you're feeling?
It almost starts to feel trapped,
Yeah.
Especially because I do have plants. I look at them and I check their roots, and once they start to their roots are bigger than the pot, they have to be repotted. Sometimes the plant just needs new soil, new pot, But if we're not growing, we're dying. Or for me, if I'm not growing, I'm dying. And I think I lived 6 years in stagnation and addiction. Lately, all I want to do is grow.
And some people would say that growing itself is addicting. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's almost like I can't sit still,
Yeah.
Like I start to scheme up different ways of improve versus letting things ride out and see how they're gonna, almost like pruning. I try to prune lives to be like, I want it to grow this way versus just letting nature take its course and then making adjustments as you need. Which is hard because that requires patience.
And patience is hard to come by. It is a virtue, but it's also a higher power gift, I think, because some people just don't have it. But
a higher power? I know that.
No, we'll avoid this topic for right now. But so with growing pains, like one of the things I also think about is you had said getting a bigger pot for your plants, right? You know that there are some fish out there that grow according to the size of their aquarium.
Right.
And so if you're in one aquarium for too long, if I'm looking around and I'm trying to grow, I've done this aquarium lab 100 billion different times in every conceivable way that I can think of, but it's not going to get me anywhere. I'm not going to grow from it, right? Until I get put into a new tank with a new environment, with other fish, and so on and so forth, and then I can grow. But it's hard to get to there sometimes, at least I think so.
Yeah.
Because I think, do you think it's comfort or complacency that is more of the downfall of someone suffering from addiction or mental health issues, or just people in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would go for just people in general, but I know really for me, complacency. Like once I know that I've made the laps in this tank and this is all, then I become king of the tank, and then this is as good as it gets, and I could live comfortable there. But I guess I am in those stages of addicted to grow, and where I didn't grow for so many years that in this past year alone, so much has changed, and I'm like, wow, this feels good, I want to continue feeling this good, but I really didn't even think about it that way. Is it addicting? But it is like serotonin. Every step I take up, I'm like, oh my God, this feels good. I want more. I want to feel this again.
Yeah. And that was one of the things that I had mentioned to our counselor, was that I really liked the way that I felt growing again.
Yeah.
But in keeping with the fish in the tank scenario, I have to be real careful to not be the fish to be like, oh, I see a bigger tank and try to jump on my own because I'm probably not going to make it. And
Like they're like you have to out outgrow your environment,
mhm,
you know?
yeah,
Not prematurely. You know, I feel like when I start to get premature growth where I'm like I'm not living day by day, I'm living the day ahead of tomorrow, you know?
hmm
Like yeah, that's where I feel like I'm kind of caught at, and I noticed that, and so I try not to make decisions, but then I feel like I'm holding myself back, you know, and I'm like, well,
so here, you talked about you take care of your plants and you notice whenever they need a new pot, right?
yeah.
And I had mentioned the fish in the aquarium and needing a bigger one. So the plant may kind of know, and the fish may kind of know that they need a bigger environment, but they themselves can't really do much about it. So, what does that say about the people in our life? For me, I think that that means that if they care, they should be able to see it and recognize that it's okay to let more growth happen. Because I think other people like to stunt our growth because they like it to where we are. Because I know that's kind of happened to me. Someone didn't want me to change a little bit of something, and I was like, no, I need this change because it's for my benefit, it's for my health, to me to become a better person. And they didn't really want that. And if they didn't want it the same way I was thinking, they didn't voice it as such.
Yeah.
But whenever you have those people in your life, you need someone to help you get to a new tank. You have to have someone that's willing to get you that new pot and help move you. So, what does that look like for you?
I totally understand that because like there was some times where like I would be dating someone who would want to be better and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want them to be better. So like I would legit try to talk them out of whatever situation they were trying to better themselves in, only
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, you're becoming a better person and I don't want to. Not that I'm
Mm-hmm.
not, it's that I don't want to. And if you get better, you're gonna want something. You're naturally you're gonna want something more suitable for you
Mm-hmm.
know. But
Yeah.
and that's part of like growing pains. It's like when you are getting better and you realize you've outgrown your pot doesn't grow with you.
Mm-mm.
You know, sometimes you have to shed the environment around you. Sometimes you like it's a weird scenario like this, but you got to be the pot that plants your own self. You know.
I was about to say, be the plant that breaks the pot, you know, grows legs and just runs away into the wild. And it's like, what was I growing again? I don't remember.
So I want to have a nursery and I want to call it the growing pot.
So, ooh, so what if we make a pot that is a plant?
Like a coconut shell.
The pot grows with the plant. It's like a symbiotic relationship of sorts. Anyways, yeah,
Oh, yes. Almost,
the
but it would almost be like a parasite.
symbiotic relationship,
So they need
and
each other.
they need each other, correct? Or maybe not heat need, but help out in a beneficial manner to where both of them are able to grow into be what they're supposed to be.
Yes.
And so you avoid some of these growing pangs with someone because they're growing with you.
Yeah. Okay, and that makes more sense. Like in even in friendships, even at work. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
you're all supposed to be growing together for a cause. You know,
Mm-hmm.
because if you're not, then
You turn into that kingfish that starts bullying everyone.
yeah. But then whenever you have two people in a partnership and you're both kingfish, now you're
Ooh.
fighting over dominion and rights and upper hand and the
So
other hand.
so it's like two beta fish in an aquarium. Like, yeah, they're one's going to kill the other one eventually, and if not, then it's quite crazy in itself right there. But so whenever we talk about growing pains, what is one of the things that you don't really think about in the heat of the moment? Whenever say you have to make an important decision regarding yourself, what is something that you set aside before making that decision? Uh, like, for instance, if you feel like it's time to move on from something or someone, you set yourself aside and you take them into account too much, or uh, are you looking at the scenarios like the benefits that you get from being with this person, or do you see different ways that you could change the person to grow with you? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So okay, so let me put it like with my family. Like
Okay.
when I had to break up with my family, um, I had to choose. Like I tried introducing them into recovery. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like I wanted them to even be part of my recovery so that they could grow with me. You know, like we
Mm-hmm.
could grow together, but they're on a we're on two different levels. You know,
Yeah.
so for the years fought back and forth of like how do I get them to grow with me, and I never took in consideration that I was just killing myself. You know.
Yeah.
So I played out scenario after scenario, or situations happened, things present opportunities
Mm-hmm.
would arise to where they could have stepped up to the plate or shown something, but at the same time, that's me wanting to take control over them. I'm not
Yeah.
naturally letting them. No one forced me into recovery. I had to naturally ease into it, and then I had to naturally. I mean, people tried through counseling, through treatment centers. I was presented with opportunities, but I had to ultimately take it. You know, like I ultimately had to be like, I want to choose to grow. You know,
Yeah.
and then it seems like in different increments, like I um even outgrew pains. You know,
Ooh.
like with people with Chris passing. I don't
Mm.
feel the same way I feel about it now, but I now back then I was more in the victim mentality of like, how could this happen to me? It was more about me and the pain I felt that I
Mm-hmm.
never really would even take in consideration the pain his friends felt, his parents, his family.
Mm-hmm.
And then now understanding that that was just what happened for that was our consequences to what we were doing. I'm more like I see that I was a different person then. If I was who I was today, we would not be doing that, you know.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. Like even in that sense, like that pot of pain
Mm-hmm.
got to I wasn't comfortable sitting in it anymore. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I was done dwelling with that pain, and I had to learn how to grow out of it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So do you think that's also kind of in line with like changing your mindset? Um because you said you were stuck in the victim mentality. So you had to change your mindset to a growing one, right?
Yeah,
So you had to accept new information. You said you were presented with possibilities, but you didn't take them at the time. But now you can look back and you can see all these things, and that's kind of uh, one of those heat of the moment things that you were blinded to because
yeah,
of, say, your mentality, or because you were stuck in a growing pain. You didn't know it at the time, right? But
yeah.
you were still kind of stuck there, and that's whenever you were in that little cube or small tank.
I don't know. Like I with a lot of things, and so I guess that's where growth became addicting because like now I hate that I do this, but like I base a lot of traumatic scenarios or things that should be traumatic or can cause traumatic, or
Mm-hmm.
discomfort off of that situation. And I'm like, look, I lost my best friend in a split second. So like
Mm-hmm.
most of anything else is like not that it's irrelevant, but like I guess it's I haven't learned how to emotionally attach myself to something anymore in fear of that type of pain again. But I
Ooh.
need to I understand that that type of pain will never exist because I was a different type of person back
Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're like, I thought you were about to go off of, you're basing everything off of potentials now, which I could totally see, and we'll get into that here in a minute. But you're unable to detach at the time, and now you're having a harder time attaching. But I think maybe that has to do again with your mentality. Um, and it's comparing the apples to oranges scenario, it sounds like. Because I mean, seriously, you're taking this situation and this old past you and this newer situation or your present you. You're comparing the pain of the old, but the thing is that you've learned your lesson from it, but now I think you're trying to learn how to apply it.
And almost honestly, it starts sometimes it feels like I'm learning how to avoid it,
Ooh,
you
tell me
know?
about that.
Because like even with friendships, I've had friendships end in sobriety, and the best way, I literally in my mind, I told myself, well, what could I do better with different friendships? How could I like start them off in the right way so that they can grow into something healthy? And I'm like, oh, easy, don't have friends.
Oh, oh man. Ouch. Ouch.
But that
But
becomes that becomes, let me just stay in this tank and be the king,
yeah.
I'm cool. But that's still not growing.
Mm-mm. Um so yeah, yeah, no, you definitely need to keep your friends. Friends are like that symbiotic pot and plant, like that plant pot. Like friends need each other, right? And it's one of those things though that I think it's hard to see in the moment because I know for myself I do a lot of past comparisons and like I'm still guilty of it to this day and I think I always will be to some extent, but I try to change my mindset on it and instead of going, well, here's what the scenario was, this is how much it sucked and whatnot, instead of comparing it too much about the pains, compared to the lessons that I can get from it. Um,
Mm.
and that's kind of why I've stopped dealing with people or try to stop dealing with too many people that don't have that potential for learning lessons for me to learn from. Does that make sense? And I don't know. I'm still learning this as I go, of course. But
I was gonna do a short essay
mm-hmm.
topic on like learning to learn,
Am I your essay?
because
Essay.
I'm sorry, you cut out.
You were going to do a short essay on what? Learning to learn?
Because like we talk about learning, but then it's like, how do you learn, you know and
It's
then
like,
really allowing myself to learn, because like again,
ooh,
I was presented with all of these. Our counselor gave me like all of these paperworks and everything, and it wasn't until like almost 2 months ago that I pulled them out of my backpack, and I'm like, oh, this stuff kind of makes sense.
yeah.
But then I was just like, okay, so now what? Now that step 11. Step 11 is the most perfect example I can give. So when I was told to do step 11, I was told read page whatever, or read what that thing that we got, that
Mm-hmm.
laminated piece of paper.
Yeah.
And I would read it and I'd be like, step 11, done. And I remember when
Yeah. Yeah.
J-Man
Yeah. Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
like, that's not doing step 11. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you have to actually do it.
Yeah. Well, real quick. But, okay, so what does step 11 look like for you?
Writing it down and then applying, like, did I hurt somebody? Do I owe an apology? And then going and doing it.
Are you not sure? Are you, do you think, I think you're talking, hang on. I think you're thinking of step 10 because that's your daily inventory.
I'm thinking of step 10. Are
Yeah.
you sure?
Because, yeah, I have the book right here. Step 10: continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Step 11: sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with our higher powers as we understood them, praying only for knowledge of their will for us and the power to carry that out. So I can see why you meant step 11.
You knew I was just testing
Oh yeah, dang,
Got him.
I made a B plus. But man, you made me forget what I was going to say. Oh, I actually had a dream the other night that what was going on was step 11. I woke up and I was just like, step 11. It's in my head now. Like, okay. And then I had a weird dream about tea trays. now I have a. Hang on, hear me out. Hear me out. Hear me out. So life is like a tea tray. Our lives are like a tea tray. Our uh, we have that one tray that holds everything, right? And then we
Yeah.
have those little cups that hold. We have the little saucers that hold the cups, and then the bowl of sugar and creamer, and then the tea itself and everything. And so each one of those things can be a different aspect of ourselves. And the thing is,
Hey,
yeah,
I gotta.
folks, we had a little bit of a technical difficulties. He had technical difficulties this time. Now, so as I was saying, the tea tray is like ourself, right? And we can have those different aspects being like that sugar, this cup of tea, this cup of tea, so on and so forth. And so then you can also have your tea that goes into each cup, but each cup can have different amounts of sugar, creamer, depending on who's drinking it. But the thing is that tray can get jostled and it can mess everything up. And so this can also be applied from all the way within ourselves to all the way out to be the entire world. The entire world is a tea tray, and this country is doing this, and it's affecting this country over here this way. And I think to tie that into growing pangs, the way that we need to grow is going to affect ourselves and others at the same time.
And
So,
it's not always a. I guess that's where it also becomes just a pain to watch. Is,
mm,
let's say, oh, let me put it in a sick plant. When you have a sick plant, and let's say a tree, all the branches are friends. Hey, homie, what's up? But this branch is gonna cause damage or is damaged, so it's got to get pruned. It's gotta
mm,
it's gotta go in order for the tree to grow. But you like that branch, you know. So
you
now
have
you're
a
watching,
you have that emotional attachment to it,
literally.
and so then you have to watch it get pruned, and so that's painful to do.
Yeah, it's painful to watch. It's painful to still be a part of the tree, and that they
Ooh,
didn't make the cut.
ouch!
Yeah,
They didn't make the cut.
they got cut, but they didn't make the cut.
Oh man. Okay, sorry, I just had to check what we're sitting at. So we got 24 minutes on the first one. So now we need about another 34 minutes. Okay, we got this. Okay. So they didn't make the cut.
Yeah.
Um so then how do we detach ourselves from someone else watching them go through their pains? Because we can grow all we want, and we have to learn how to attach or detach so that we know when and how to grow and where to grow after we've been pruned a little bit, whether it be other people doing it for us choosing what parts to prune. Whenever we're watching someone else do it, how do we go about stepping back and letting it take its course?
That is the hardest thing for someone who wants to advocate change and growth into everyone around you. That's what you want for people. It is
Mm-hmm.
so hard to step back and let them be comfortable.
Ah.
That's the hardest thing for me to do, is just step back and like see people not be their full potential. But
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, the good thing is that I was once that way. I once didn't see that I had potential. I let it just sit, thinking that I didn't have potential, and now I'm like, I don't feel that way. So I know that there's people who are changing, but I'm not. I mean, I can't. That sounds rude and that sounds wrong, but I'm not built to sit and watch.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah, I feel that. Whoa.
I'm built to be a part of it. I'm built to be a part of change and growth and accomplishments, and even the
Mm-hmm.
downfall. Because the downfalls is there's opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
That's what one thing I pride myself on, even in just my work life, is making mistakes. Not that I make mistakes, but that when I'm told I made a mistake, it's okay. I can fix it, and we'll figure out how this could be avoided next time. You know?
Did you just say you don't make mistakes at work?
No, I'm saying
You totally just said you don't make mistakes at work.
no. I said that's what I pride myself on, is making mistakes. You know,
Uh, okay.
is making mistakes, getting told that I made a mistake, and then being like, "Oh, nothing, not the end of the world. Let's fix it. Now let's figure out how this mistake could be avoided for me and everyone else." You know?
But what if it's not necessarily a mistake either? What if it's just something that is hindering your growth? See? Because so how do we recognize when growth is needed? Because I think that's another part of growth is recognizing it doesn't have to be a mistake that means you get
You need to grow.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh.
It hurts. That one hurts. Because mistakes are easy to sit there and go like, oh yeah, like I can learn from that one. But
Oh.
whenever it's not a mistake, it's like, but why? Well, there's still something to be learned from it, but I think that kind of brings us back to becoming complacent.
Mm-hmm.
So just because it wasn't a mistake doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but at the same time, by it not being a bad thing doesn't mean it's a good thing either.
I guess you just got to choose to want to grow.
So we had also mentioned that earlier. It's a mentality mindset, right? And
Yeah.
you'd said allowing ourselves to grow because we can sit there and I can hold myself back and just out of sheer force of will, I can sit there and stop myself from growing. But like you said, I have to choose to grow. And I think that is easier whenever it's mistakes being made that are being pruned instead of going, all right, now I have to just keep going with what I got. But I mean, go ahead.
So you're you're gonna call me crazy, but there
Crazy.
there's this Taylor Swift song
Oh my god. Hey,
that I don't.
WDJY, the radio show we're on.
Oh, okay. Well, there's some
Go
lyrics in
go
one of
ahead.
her songs that she says, what does it say? He was sunshine, I was midnight rain. He wanted it comfortable, I wanted that pain. He wanted a
Ooh.
bride, I was making my own name, chasing that fame. He stayed the same, and all of me changed like midnight rain. But the part that always caught that, like literally I'm stuck on is he wanted it comfortable, I wanted that pain.
Mm.
And I don't necessarily think that she was like, "Oh, let's go self harm," but she understood the pains of growing, you know. And
Yeah.
again, he wanted it comfortable. She had outgrown that pot, and she was, in a sense, insinuating that she was harming herself just by staying
Mm-hmm.
within that situation because he wanted it comfortable.
Yeah.
That's not what she wanted, and that
Yeah.
obviously couldn't be what they wanted, you know.
Mm-hmm. And I think that that's kind of where it comes back into that complacency aspect because like we had said earlier, you had said that we're supposed to be growing together. And whenever one aspect stops growing, it'll stunt the other part. And we've already said it again that growing is addicting.
Yeah.
And it's its own little bit of like serotonin. It's a whole bunch of shadow work and getting to figure out who we really are and growing that part. Um, and I'd have to agree that whenever things are going good, it doesn't necessarily mean that things are still going good.
Yeah.
And I think that is a painful truth right there for some people.
Yeah,
Um,
no, because I realized that myself just because I have a good job. I'm paying where I live. I'm eating healthy. Things looked good from the outside, but like for me on the inside, I just still
mhm,
wasn't fulfilled. And a lot of it had to do with I had to change a sponsor, and I just was like, you know what, life is good like this. I don't need a sponsor. And it really hasn't been until
ooh,
recent that I'm like, you know what, I'm looking for a sponsor. And like now I'm meeting up with a potential one, but
mhm,
I at the same time I think I was just because it's a sponsor, I'm a little bit scared that it's like, okay, well, let's redo the steps and that
uh-huh,
whole number. But
yeah,
that's a part of like, maybe I need to reevaluate. Maybe I need to do another step 4.
yeah. Um, and so like I had changed sponsors, and he didn't necessarily say like, "Hey, let's redo the steps, right? I was like, hey, like I've heard about people redoing the steps whenever they get a new sponsor. We're going out of a different book and I want to do those steps. And so like I'm doing two books at the same time essentially. But the first step in the PIR book, go outside and make the weather change with your will. I can't control it with my will. But I think that kind of goes into the whole willing, uh what you touched on earlier. I was trying to tie it back in all nice and smooth and
Lost it.
I lost it.
Willingness, okay, so it also kind of, for me, like I've been saying that literally the serenity prayer a lot lately, because how do I put it without spilling too much? So there were certain directions that were being taken at my workplace, and I didn't want it. I knew the change. I knew some of the changes needed to happen. I knew some things needed to change, and I was like, I don't want that change. So I tried to stop it as long as I could, but then at the same time, that's me taking control over something that I don't need to have control over. And it was a part of surrender of control, what I can control, and that is just me and my area of the job,
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's what I was trying to get back into was the control aspect. Because you'd said that you were trying to also you want to control the aspects of other people for growth. But it goes back into that they have to be willing, they have to allow it. And at the same time, it's detaching again, right?
Yeah.
So I think growing is a lot of attachment, detachment, self-evaluation, re-evaluation, surrounding evaluation. I just think that there's so much that goes into growth, but it all leads back into the beginning again, because that's what growth is essentially, right? There's not necessarily a start and or finish, because there's death after life and there's life after death, right?
Yep.
Because plants have seeds and like organisms have offspring, and so it's continuously growing. We're not sitting there and we're not meant to be a marble statue carved by Da Vinci and whatnot. But I mean, seriously, like we're not supposed to be like a work of art right out of the box, because we have to start as some kind of rude, crude shape that eventually gets refined. And the thing is that we have to kind of refine ourselves. Otherwise, we'll let the world do everything to us, and that's not growing.
Yeah. And like, I mean, even like with plants, sometimes it's the environment. Maybe it's not in the ideal. With my plants, I'm like, okay, let me get y'all like a little dome. Let me get y'all a light. Let me provide y'all with what y'all specifically need. And if you grow, you grow. If you don't, you don't. Like I can't force a plant to grow. Same way I can't force a person to grow.
Miracle Grow.
Hey, that has chemicals. That's not natural.
It's not natural. Miracle Grow's not natural, but it's blue.
Blue's not even a natural color.
What?
You've never? No, wait. We're going into something deeper.
It's deeper than growth.
Sacred geometry here.
Okay, but I think a lot of stuff with mental health has to deal with growth. It has to deal with repeating itself, because it's not done. We're never really done growing. We're not. I mean, we can be if we want to be, but then it's kind of like, I think those are some of the most miserable people I've ever met, are the ones that think that they're done, that they've hit the epitome of being who they're supposed to be. And that's the thing, is that I can see the potential, but I can also see whenever someone's being a dumbass and just totally not like taking that potential and running with it. And I think a lot of it has to do with fear. So what do you think about fear and growth?
It's hindering. It stops you. but it
Mm-hmm.
also is probably one of the most familiar feelings with growth.
Mm-hmm.
Along with growth comes fear of the unknown territory you're stepping into.
Mm-hmm.
You know, mentally, emotionally, physically,
Mm-hmm.
it's uncertain. You know, I mean, of course, you're gonna jump into some positions and you're gonna be like, "Oh yeah, I expected this." You know, you're
Mm-hmm.
prepared for it. You prepared yourself for it. Or
Mm-hmm.
there's the chances of like there's things you aren't equipped for. So,
And being prepared and all that, that comes from growth.
I was thinking of a way of growth here a minute ago. So think of a graphing paper, right? One little squared box goes up, it grows, then it goes up. Well, what if it goes to the side? Is that still growth? Because he's not in the same spot it used to be,
But it's
but is
not
it still
going
growth?
up. And okay, so let's take it back to plants. Whenever a tree gets a new branch, it goes outwards. It's still going up ish, but you have those that are jutting out, right? And you know what that causes? It causes an imbalance on the tree because the tree is supposed to go up structurally. And so it is still growing, but it's not growing in the right direction.
Oh, okay. Ooh. I like that.
So I guess the question is, how do we decide if it's in the right direction?
Consequences.
Ooh, we're back to fear of consequences.
Yeah, that was an easy one right there because I know if I grow into an asshole, my consequences are like,
Or like what?
are back to no friends, back to no job, or for having to find new jobs because you're an asshole. And
But so okay, but what would growth in the opposite direction look like? Would that not be so? Growth in the opposite direction is word is escaping me at the moment. Regression. So it's taking that step back. So that's one way we can look at a relapse is a regression. We went back to something we were familiar with, right? So that's
yeah,
not necessarily growth, but we may have grown, but we went back a little bit. So we regressed, we relapsed. But what is the defining moments of there was growth, but not in the right way? And for me, I think that that comes in the form of um, application. What were you
po-
about to say?
politics. Yeah. Because like you can get into your position in the wrong way for the wrong reason to do the
Oh.
wrong things, and it's like me saying I want to be owner of a business only so that I can be an asshole and like I don't have to be fired because I'm an asshole, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
like I grew I oh, damn, he's a business owner only so he can belittle people. And you know, like that's where I
Beat?
see huh?
Did you say beat little people?
We're talking about growing in the wrong direction. That was the picture that painted in my mind. uh,
But he became a business owner just to belittle people. And what else? Sorry.
and belittle people.
So I think that that kind of goes with that application. Like he may have learned some stuff along the way. He may have learned how to be real sneaky and whatnot. But so I guess that comes into the morality aspect.
Mm,
And I think that morality is something that is like way not beyond our scope by any means, but I think that's an episode all in its own because there's a lot that goes into morality.
God,
Um, because my morals may not be your morals, and so on and so forth. I don't think two people have the exact same morals. And this is where it could get real heavy and debated. And that's why people have all these controversies go on all the time, is because their morals tell them one thing or another. And
yeah.
so that's where a lot of growth can actually like hit each other because science is growing in one way, but religion is growing in another, and they conflict all of a sudden. And now what? People's
Well,
morals,
out of those two, spirituality came into play. You know,
and that's where
because
the
yeah,
oh, I like it. But go on, explain.
Because like spirituality is kind of like just being the example to me. Like so,
Mm.
I don't know if I should talk about it, but
Uh-oh.
like say somebody wants to represent who their political party is, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone so disagrees with it, and I'm like, it doesn't bother me because you're obviously wanting to unify and accepting that somebody wants to display who their political party is, allowing them to do that. Like you're being the unity in the spiritual one. You know, one person being
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh no, science is God," and someone's like saying, "No, God
It's
is God."
science.
Yeah, and then you're just like, you're both right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You
And
know, mindfulness, spirituality. Like you're right, and you're right, and you believe in something, and that's good, and like that's honorable.
and so that goes into the application. And I think the bottom line is just don't be an
Consequences.
Do you know if we can say asshole on the radio? Because I really don't know.
I
Um,
don't think so.
I've got a lot of editing to do.
You need to start tallying it up. Like, all right, he did this one. I
Oh
said this
God.
one. He said this one.
I mean, I have a good way of editing it and stuff now. I got it figured out, but it's still going to take a little bit with how many times we've said that.
We need to hire someone to belittle them and
No, I'm
mark
not.
down.
I'm not going to beat little people. But no, so I have actually thought about hiring someone to be like, hey, like $5 an episode. But then I'm like, is that too much? And then I'm like, I'm paying everything out of pocket. Like, no, it's not too much, um, or too little.
Well, just tell
That's
them
what I
that their
meant.
name's going to be at the end credits. Sneaky, grown in the wrong direction. The little dot said to the side.
You know, people got in trouble about that, like whenever movies were coming out and stuff, right? Like whenever they started having rolling credits, people would get left out of that, and they would throw fits about it, rightfully so too. And so that's the way the movie industry. That's the way the movie industry has grown, to include everyone. That's why a credit scene is now like 5 minutes all on its own, because it's literally crediting every single person that had something to do with that movie. So,
And now the world doesn't watch that.
oh my god.
Well, I mean,
But no, now we have to say, are we going to accredit the people that attribute it to our growth?
oh, yes, 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 yes. Because like there are two people that I credit to me stepping
Mm-hmm.
into this newer version of me,
Mm-hmm.
and it is my boss from work and my counselor. And I
Mm-hmm.
talk about them when I do presentations or I go do H&Is because they were like the two people that like legit one of them, my boss, laid down the law for me.
Mm-hmm.
She was just like, I get what you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
I see the potential in you, but I also will terminate you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like in the same conversation, she like inspired me, understood me, and she told me this was not tolerable.
Yeah.
You know, so she gave me
Mm-hmm.
what the three things I and instinctively needed on that version of me. You know, and it
Yeah.
needed to be her. Had somebody else said that to me, a previous employer, I'd have been like, "You ain't nothing. You ain't no.
Nice catch.
I could, I could go get another job, which I easily could have. You know, I could have
Mm-hmm.
like spit it in her face and been like, "You don't know anything," blah blah blah. But the fact that I had already been growing in the right direction, she pruned. She stopped me from growing in the wrong direction. You know,
Oh.
and then I had that counselor who believed that I could grow into the
Mm-hmm.
right direction and was waiting for her opportunity to, in a sense, prune, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But she was in that patient line where she had to see where I was going to go in order for her to be able to do her qualified work. Because obviously she's qualified for a lot of things, you know, trauma and substance abuse. And so it really, at the time that I was paired up with her, was the divine timing.
Yeah. Um. So, what about crediting the people that are the motivator for your growth? As in the aspiration to not be that person.
Like so.
I didn't want to say it, but yeah,
Oh yeah.
I didn't want to say that, but yeah. So I
Uh,
think I think I have to accredit some of those people from time to time, just because it gives me an example of what I didn't want to be at that time. Because you know that saying, you spot it, you got it.
yeah.
Well, if I can spot someone else as being an asshole, that means I'm just as capable of, or if not, am that asshole. So that makes me take a look at myself and go, okay, well, I don't like this, and this about him. But then spirituality came into play, and it made me go, well, I have those same exact defects. I have those same things, and I don't want those. So what do I do about it? And then I have to go about doing that shadow work, the self reflection, talking to my counselor, and seeking out other people that know maybe not better. I'm
Yeah.
just kidding, but people that just have more experience with life, with growing. And I had to sit there and be able to recognize that this person has these traits, but then I had to see that I had those traits and I didn't want them anymore. So what do I do? How do I go about pruning? And that's that selective pruning. I was able to sit there and say, I don't want this, I don't want that, but it's because I had to see it from someone else being displayed and see how it not only affected me, but those around that person.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be that guy, I don't want to be that person. But at the same time, I know I'm fully capable of it because I can see it in other people. But
You're
that's where my.
learning from other people's mistakes. I mean, that's one of
Mm-hmm,
the healthiest ways to learn is from other people's mistakes, you know?
mm-hmm. Um, and
Or
I think
accomplishments. Like it doesn't have to be their mistakes.
oh, I like how you caught that. Um, and so with that right there, you had given me an example earlier, before we started recording, about how you affected someone in your day to day life that they were able to do something you didn't think that they would do, right? I don't know if you're comfortable saying it or whatnot, but essentially, in last episode, we had talked about in our addiction, we affect 17 people um, in our addiction. And so I think the inverse is true. In us
Yeah.
growing, we positively affect at least 17 people around us. Um, and so I think other people, because growing is also like going to the gym. You go to the gym, you don't necessarily see the results right away. But other people, they can see it like nothing, right?
Same when you start eating.
Oh man, you didn't have to go there.
uh,
Simba.
you all of a sudden you start doing good and getting some food, and then Colonel,
You gonna get what you get.
um,
Oh.
no, I back to the crediting. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's important to let those credible people know because, like with my team, I did share with them my recovery, and the reason I shared it with them is because I told them I'm a person who needs to be inspired. I love
Mm.
to grow, but in order for me to grow, I need literally like a daily dose of inspiration. And I had seen this team struggle. I had seen this team go through people in and out. They had changes in management time after
Mm-hmm.
time, and I mean they went through the ringer for months, and they stayed, they stood their ground, and it's now turned into like this healthy growing environment for them. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's why like I openly share everything with them because I'm like, you guys push me to be a better person out of work, which in turn helps me be a good employee while I'm at work, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's created this almost like a self-sustained system of like inspiration growth that allows for failure. And that's the
Mhm.
one thing I do like to teach them too, is like, if you did something wrong, it's not the end of the world. It's easier. It's like how we learned
Mhm.
the oatmeal bowl. If you can either rinse it out
Mhm.
before you go to bed, or you can leave it in the sink, and it's going to be harder to clean tomorrow.
Mhm.
You make a
Yep.
mistake, bring it up. Hey, I broke this. Hey, I accidentally did this. Hey, I mistakenly gave this animal this wrong medication. Just bring it up
Mhm.
immediately so that we can know how to address it versus, but and again, just having the courage to say I made a mistake is a growth in its own. But can you see the fear in that too?
Mhm. Yeah. And I like how you said growing environment at your work and accrediting those people because that pushes them to become better too. And I think one thing that we strive for growth, but at the same time, kind of like going to the gym, we may not see the results ourselves. So it's nice to get that recognition from others to say, hey, I'm proud of you. Like, you've done so much growing in this amount of time. Like, that was one of the favorite things I had at Nehemiah was watching those guys come in through the door and then watching them grow and
Yeah.
to be like pretty freaking awesome people. Like, some of the best people I've ever known, too, oddly enough, right? But that's the thing with us addicts and people that suffer from mental health issues is that we're actually really kind, caring, and loving people. It's just that we have something that's holding us down. But
We have layers.
like an onion. but uh but no, like having someone like you in the workforce in that team environment, and you said team because y'all are growing together, you're in a growing environment, you're in this place, and it helps whenever other people tell you and you tell them that, like, hey, like, y'all help me grow, and invariably you're going to help them, invariably, whatever, and one way or another you're going to help them grow, whether they recognize it or you're going to have to push them to grow, because then it's at that point pruning the growing environment. Are you going to let a weed grow once you notice that weed, or what? Like, maybe it's not a weed, maybe it's a dandelion, you know? And
Yeah.
dandelions.
Even if it's like say a weed scenario, it
Mm-hmm.
still provides something to the ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. And it'll also act as an example for the people that aren't going to weed themselves out. Say,
Yeah.
oh, well, so and so was doing this, and so now so and so's not here. I wouldn't be here, so I don't do what so and so did. So learning by other people's mistakes.
Because the really
Damn, you're good at this.
the panic at the acid test was whenever I suggested, I was like, I think we're at a very good level of we could hire someone with no experience. In my recent experiences there, we did not do that because that person was eaten alive. I mean, they wouldn't make it. It was one of those things where they were just voted off the island. Like they weren't granted the opportunity because I base it off of me. When I came in, I had zero experience with that type of work. I had done something similar, but
Mm-hmm.
not to the level that we're at here. And I was giving someone a shadow for like 3 weeks, and now look at me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the best employee, but I know a lot there. And I wanted someone I want everyone to be granted that opportunity, but it's kind of hard when you're juggling several changes. But
Mm-hmm.
we did hire someone with like little experience, and he's really liking it. The team is like opening up to him. We're getting to know him. It's super cool. It literally is the coolest thing. So we have so many different type of characters. Like you have people who love the gym, you have people who love raves, you got someone who loves Taylor Swift. I'm not going to say who, but we got someone who loves books, and it's just different type of people. And sometimes we have like one person sitting over there on their phone, one person sitting over here. We'll random have different type of groups, and I'm trying to find something that'll bring us all together. And you know what, I found that the other day, and it was so weird because I was actually trash talking. um I was watching
Oh.
what's it called, Lord of the Rings, with a friend. and I brought it up. I was like, "Oh my god, I finally finished Lord of the Ring," and then everyone jumped into the conversation. Apparently, everybody loves that movie, and everyone like has read the books, and so you got all these different types of like personalities joining together talking about Lord of the Rings, and I'm like, "Oh."
And now you're the odd one out because you're like, I didn't like it that
Yes.
much. I just thought it. But that's really cool though. And uh, I mean, there's a lot to say on that too. But we 37 minutes. We got a little bit of time because I can edit it. Yay,
Yeah.
editing. But finding a unifying factor for growth. It's kind of I think that's a really good motivator right there, is having that one thing that everyone can strive for, having goals. Who wants to be employee of the month, right? I don't know how well that works with competition and growth, but
Yeah.
some people with trial by fire.
Yeah, okay, bro. I'm so glad you said that because that's where I was getting at with the box going to the side. It's a
Hmm.
trial and error because sometimes you may need to go back over here to get back on track. You know,
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
um, I can't think of an example, but I had it in my mind. But it was like that's another part of like growing is trial and error. You know,
Hmm.
sometimes you
Yeah.
have to try something, and I always tell myself decide, and I even tell my team just decide, even if it was the wrong decision, fix it, but just decide because I can spend. I will start to get stagnant in
Mm.
indecision. You know.
Yeah. Instead of fighting or flying, you freeze. Um, because
Yep.
I'm guilty of that by all counts. I am very guilty of freezing all the time. Just like, yep, nope, not making a decision because it's uncomfortable. Instead of growing and just doing what I'm supposed to do. Um, but uh, so with that being said, we do have just a couple more minutes. So I want to thank everyone for listening to Retrieving Sanity. No, no, definitely editing that out.
Oh.
So I want to thank everyone for listening to Retrieving Sanity on WDJY 99.1 FM and on Facebook and on Podbean. You can catch us at retrievingsanity.com. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and we're also on YouTube. So, Simba, would you have anything to say for the audience tonight about growth?
Just keep on growing and remember people come and grow, you know?
People come and grow. All right. Well, that's all the time that we have for this episode. So until we see you next week, Sean.
Hasta la pasta. Okay, bye. I forgot that's what I was going to do.